welcome to Grow Big TV. You're on Grow Big TV. On Grow Big TV. And here's Joe and Corky.
Hi, welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. We got an epic interview. We got a legend. We have one of the true legends in the whole world. We have Tony O'Neill from Simplify Gardening.
Yay!
Well, super excited. And welcome in, everybody. We appreciate it. And well, we're going to start off with our 6 inches of soil video. It's not ours. It's a 6 inches of soil video, and they're allowing us.
Believe what they're saying, so that's that's why we're playing it.
So I absolutely love this. It's coming out very, very soon. 6 inches of soil.
6 inches of soil feeds 8 billion people.
We already grow enough of all the essential nutrients to feed everyone who's alive.
Farming is the single biggest cause of biodiversity collapse, the second biggest cause of climate change.
Soil is the most valuable resource on the planet, and we're degrading it without even realizing.
We have come to believe that money is more important than soil. That idea has to change.
Regenerative agriculture is farming that we're producing food, but also farming in harmony with nature.
You're working with nature, not against it.
The more people see it, the more that they realize that it works.
Having a regenerative agroecological system, that is surely the solution.
Soils are absolutely phenomenal in the amount of carbon they can store.
What we absolutely need now is urgent action from the government.
Until you deal with 9 retailers who have 94.5% of food sales in Britain, you're not going to have a level playing field.
Consumers have a choice. They can decide to buy cheap meat from industrial farms, or they can find farmers that really value animal welfare and the environment that we're farming in.
Dad started regen farming for the future generations to come, and that was the most selfless act he could have done.
The people who are doing this are making big sacrifices.
I think the potential is absolutely huge here.
These farms really can change the world.
It's all about the soil, isn't it, really?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You know, when I see that video, the first thing that comes to my mind is those sun gold tomatoes. Looks like I see all those tomatoes and the kids eating them, and it's like that's the way to get it, getting kids eating from the garden. You know, and I would have that whole bucket. I love sun gold tomatoes. So I'm gonna do a little bio on Tony, so you guys know who he is. He's one of the first YouTubers that came aboard, I believe, in 2007. We're gonna ask him that. But I'm going to go to Lincoln page and talk a little bit about Tony. So, Simplify Gardening. So, he's an author, blogger, presenter at Self-Employed. He's a self-employed garden blogger, YouTube video creator, social blogging at simplifygardening.com. In here, he talks about his book. So, we're going to talk a little bit about his book that just came out, and some articles that he wrote about purple kale, or videos on purple kale and parsnips. So here's his little bio. We got Tony O'Neill, author, blogger, gardening expert. He's dedicated to empowering both novice and experienced gardeners. Tony O'Neill is passionate author, blogger, and gardening expert with a mission to demystify the art of gardening. He creates informative and engaging content across multiple platforms, including simplifygardening.com, his popular YouTube channel, and various other social media outlets. As a skilled presenter, Tony combines his extensive horticultural knowledge with approachable and personable style, making it easier for audiences to learn and apply practical gardening tips and techniques. By consistently sharing valuable insights and innovative solutions, he has established himself as a trusted resource in the gardening community. I mean, we got an icon.
I was going to ask you, do you have your glasses on, Joe?
I know. I was doing the same thing. I'm like, I forgot my glasses, but I did not forget my tea. Joey brought out my tea, and I'm like, oh, this is so good first thing. You notice I didn't have my glasses on.
Yeah, that's why I was like, Joe, like, how are you reading that? Yeah.
I'm starting to read. I'm like, oh my God, this is rough. Well, welcome in, Tony O'Neill. How you doing?
Hello.
I'm good. Hi, everyone. How are you doing?
We're so happy to have you. I mean, you are truly a legend in the gardening world.
Oh, thank you.
And when did you start YouTube?
So I started YouTube in 2007, just after Google bought it. Originally, YouTube was a dating website in 2005 when it started, and then Google later bought it and turned it into what it is today. And originally, I started it as a way of storing video files because memory cards were really expensive and I was poor. So it was just a great way of storing videos. And over the next sort of 5 years, I noticed that people were subscribing and I thought, well, you know, there's something here. So why don't I try to help these people? Because I was getting asked questions and things. And in 2012, I rebranded and I pushed out and started making sort of how-to content and things like that.
Awesome.
Well, did you ever use the dating service?
No. It didn't do very well as a dating service because what happened was a lot of people had the same idea as me and they were like uploading, you know, videos of their holidays and stuff like that. And then like the guys who designed, you know, YouTube back then, they thought, well, you know, we're failing as a dating service. They were 2 college students. And so they just allowed people to do that. And then it built up enough that it stood out to Google and Google bought it. So,
nice.
Yeah, so I've been there pretty much from the start.
It's so funny thinking about 2007 because I'm thinking 2007's yesterday still.
Yeah.
And then you look at it, 24 minus 7.
Yeah, it's a long time. You'd be surprised. It's like your story earlier on about the sun gold tomatoes. My son, my 2 kids from this marriage have grown up on the garden. There's videos of me pushing the pram onto the garden and they're sitting there just watching me and they pushing their old little wheelbarrows around. So that's how long it's been. And they're both teenagers now. And there's videos of him there. And every single year is the same. He will come up and he will strip a plant just eating sun gold tomatoes up there because when they're warm, they're just so sweet and they're fantastic, you know. He loves them. He can't get enough.
So, Tony, I'm going to bring up your book, and I want you to talk a little bit about your book. So
Sure.
I just bought it yesterday, which I'm looking forward to reading it. So you can buy this at various outlets. February 28th, I believe it comes out, and Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, Apple Books, and a whole bunch of other places.
Yeah, it's going to be available in pretty much any bookstore. All you need to do is go and ask them to get it for you. So,
Nice.
and obviously Amazon. So if you just want it sent to you, I will give you guys a link if you wouldn't mind putting it down in the description and make it easier for people because that's like a link tree. So you'll have all these places and they can just pick wherever they want to get it from.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. So right now I have that up on the Amazon link.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit. What's in the book?
So the book is absolutely. It's been done by Cool Press Springs, part of the Quartal Group, and they've done a fantastic job with this book. It took a long time. Now, this is my 3rd book, and I wanted this book to be a resource that people didn't have to keep going over regurgitated information. Okay, so we talk about why gardening's important in the beginning, and I think it was important to put this in there. And that 6 inches of soil is a prime example of why I sort of wrote this in the beginning of the book, so that people understand why we're gardening. Because all too often I hear, well, you know, you can go and buy carrots really cheap in the store, you know, but they don't seem to understand the difference between carrots grown at home and carrots grown in the store, and being able to control all of that stuff. Okay, so there's a bit about that in the book. And then if I go to the contents, so I don't know if you guys can make this out. Okay, so in here we've got the growing importance of the importance of growing vegetables, the perfect trio, nature, science, and you. So the byline of the book is veggie gardening with a side of science. Okay, so I go into how to basically get the best crops that you possibly can. So we're talking about how a plant works, the nutrition behind it, and everything else. Okay, and about microbial life in the soil and how you can increase that, and all that sort of stuff. And then a bit later on, we talk about growing all the different vegetables as families, rather than saying, right, this is how you grow kale, and then this is how you grow cabbage, when effectively they're pretty much the same because they're the same family. They like all the same stuff. But what you find in typical books is, this is how to grow kale, and then you get all this information, and then this is how to grow cabbage, and it's the exact same information, so it's just regurgitated. So what we've done is condensed all of that information down into families. So they will be like a brassica family, and in there, then it'll break it all down. So preparing soil, the nutrition it needs, how to deal with all the pests and disease. There'll be all the nutrients, the macro and the micronutrients, and where you can get them from organically. You know, all of this sort of stuff. Okay, it's basically been broken down into a family, so that if you've got like sprouts that are having a problem, you can go straight to that section, say, right, this is what I need to do. Oh, this is the pH of my soil. Do a soil test. My soil is all over the place, type of thing. But you know, it goes into detail, but what it does, it just rolls it down into families, so you're not having all that detail for every single vegetable type that you could have. But that's essentially what the book is. It's quite an important book to me. It's my third one. It'll be the last book I'm going to write for quite some time, and I've dedicated this one to my grandfather, who started me in gardening.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. So your grandfather started you gardening. Who else was around? Was it just you and him?
Yeah, so obviously I lived with my parents and what have you, but we spent a lot of my time in a little place called Abercynon. So it's a very small village, and within that village is a little area called Carntown. And it's literally just a cluster of streets. And on the back of those streets was quite a hilly mountain, and his allotment was right behind his house on this mountain. And I was 7 years old when I started going up there with him, and he would have this allotment. It was really steep, but he terraced the allotment off, and right at the very top would be an old steel shack, you know, a tin shed, you know, the corrugated iron, and it would be really damp and smell musty and what have you, but he would be up there. He'd sit up there with a little fire, and he'd be barking orders at me to go to the bottom. And my very first memory was picking those gooseberries, those little sweet ripe gooseberries, but getting those thorns stuck in my fingers. And from that day, it's just always been with me. Now, we didn't live very long. You know, he died when I was about 9 or 10. So it was only a couple of years that he was able to sort of impart that information, but he did enough of a job to ensure that that stayed with me right the way to now. And I'm just about to turn 49. So it's, you know, we're talking 42 years. It's stayed with me like.
Well, you know, when we do things with a passion, there's always that why statement. And
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a while to get that why statement, like, because you don't think about it. You just
No, you
go
don't.
about it, you do things. And so that would be actually that statement is with your memories with your grandfather.
Yeah, and you know, the other books that I wrote, don't get me wrong, I put my heart and soul into them, but not like this book, you know. And the other two books that I wrote were self-published because they were quite thick books, and a normal publisher, for them to be able to publish that book in the quality that they publish and everything else, that book would have to be like £50 or about $60 or something. It's crazy. So I decided to self-publish those because I could keep the cost right down in order for people to get the information that they needed without, you know, the books. I mean, this book is about 55,000 words, but those both books, one is like 110,000, the other's 130, so they're like double the thickness of this one, and this is quite a thick book, you know. But because this one was special to me, I wanted it to be through the Cool Springs Press publishers, and they've done a fantastic job. It looks absolutely stunning, and it, you know, it took a long time coming back and forth, making sure it was perfect.
That's awesome.
So for those that don't know, what's an allotment?
Yeah.
Okay, so an allotment is, I think the easiest way to explain it is a community garden. You guys have those, right? So, so it's literally a parcel of land that is split up into what's known as plots, and they can be various sizes. And you rent that plot for a nominal fee. And then, when I say nominal, not so much this day and age, it's gone up quite a lot. You know, there's some places just for a really small plot is you're looking at like £100 a year, and then there's me who has all the land that I have, and I'm paying about £80 a year for it all. So, so I'm quite lucky, but mine's not with a council, as I mentioned to you earlier on. So essentially, it's plots of land. It's just split up. Usually there's no fences, but some people do put fences up just to sort of demarcate where their land finishes and what have you. And then you will grow on there, and you can keep that land until the day you die, as long as you're using that land for growing on, and it's at least 75% utilized for growing vegetables or flowers or whatever it is you want to grow on them. And they were put together around about World War II. There was allotments before, but in World War II they became really iconic because of the Dig for Victory thing, where people were digging in their backyards, but those who didn't have backyards needed land, so the councils got together and they allocated areas of land that could have food grown in them to help with the war efforts and everything else. So, and they just known as allotments here, but technically it's just a community garden, but you own that area rather than, lots of people coming in and helping on it, if you get my drift.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that was my next question with the allotment is, you have some allotments that are really weedy and stuff growing over the place because they don't really care about it. Then you have the other people, because every time you look on YouTube, you look it up, there's no weeds. It's perfect. It looks so abundant. I mean, then you see in the United States, you do a video and perfect garden 2 weeks in, next week, all weeds. Next week, oh, I give up. They're done.
But you get that in the UK too. So a prime example is one of the plots next to me. Someone come on there. They realized there was a bit of work to do. And what usually happens is new people will come and these areas have been overgrown and what have you. So they have to do a fair bit of work in the beginning to get them under control. And they do that and they start planting things and they don't quite have the knowledge they require to keep those things going, or it's the wrong timing or whatever the case being, and it dies. They lose interest because of the amount of work that's involved. And you can make a garden as easy or as hard as you want it to be. Now, unfortunately, YouTube doesn't make it that easy, and people, they see an 8-minute video, the garden looks pristine, and all they're doing is sowing seeds and harvesting veg. And that's the reality that people seem to think
Yeah.
happens on a garden. They
And then
don't
they think
see
it's so
the
easy.
months and months of work that that goes into pulling weeds and what have you, you know. So yeah, I mean, and my garden is like 195 feet by 85 feet, so it's a really big plot of land as well that I'm gardening, and I'm doing that alone.
Yeah.
So people generally help each other out in the community garden now. So you see somebody struggling at the beginning, somebody would, hey, I'm gonna go help them out. You generally,
yeah, it's the same on allotments as well. You will you'll help people. One of the things about gardening, even on YouTube now with you guys, me, and what have you, there's always community there. People are, you know, they're not afraid to come and, you know, give their help and advice and what have you. All you've got to do is want that. So people are always happy to help. But the problem is with new people, I think they feel that they don't want to impose on people. And even if it's offered, they'll turn that help down, you know, or they get, I want to do this myself, and then don't realize the task that they're undertaking.
That's some great info. That's
Yeah, and you're completely right about the garden thing. Like, I don't think there's, like, if I showed my garden in the spring when I'm starting to plant stuff, I think people would be a little scared because they're like, oh my gosh, because there's a lot of work that has to go into it. So
yeah,
I think people are a little terrified of that. They don't understand, or they just buy, because I start all my own stuff. They just go and they buy plants from the local greenhouse or whatever, and they put it in, and then they don't water it for a week, and then it dies, and they're like, they give up so easily. They don't understand.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, you know, the problem, the great thing about gardening is, like, I know 1,001 ways that won't work, but I only need to find one way that does. And then I know I can grow that particular thing over and over and over again. Right. So, and that's what it's about, is that resilience of being able to say, do you know what, this didn't work this time, but I'm going to try this next time, you know, and the experimentation that comes with gardeners. And like, I'm here in Wales, UK, it's constantly raining, it's cold, and I'm trying to grow bananas. You know, so now people would tell me that, are you mental? What are you up to? And but for me, it's just like a challenge. Now you have to be specific in the variety you choose and everything else, and you're nurturing it constantly. And I've been doing it for 3 years, and I have found probably about 150 ways that don't work. So one day, though, you know, but look, you know, the worst thing that can happen is, right, you lose everything. But the great thing about the garden is winter is a fantastic reset, you know. So you can get back there, scrape it all back to the ground, and start all over again.
And that's where I get a
about.
lot of my inspiration as well. I wait, you know, if something didn't, which most of the time something doesn't go right, you know, some does go right, then I got wintertime, and I think about the next year and how I'm going to do it the next year. And that's where I get a lot of my inspiration, and that's where I buy hundreds and hundreds of dollars of seeds sometimes, because I have a seed addiction.
You're not the only one. I've had boxes and boxes of seed. I was going through them the other day, and I'm thinking, why have I got something here from 2015? You know, and that's gone out and what have you. But you know, and even then, it's like I'll do a germination test on them before throwing them. You know, these things are like 9 years old, and it'll be surprising. Like, I put lettuce seed. I'd done a test on lettuce seed that was in 2015, and I'd done that test this year, and I had about a 95% success rate on germination on it. Nice. So it's like, this is 9-year-old seed. Now, more often than not, people would have just binned it. You know, once you start getting down to like 60 and 70% germination, it's not really worth the time, you know, because you may not be guaranteed the crops you want. But always do a germination test rather than just launching it out, you know, because you just don't know. And, you know, I've had seed given to me. There was an old guy on some of the land that I have now. He died a few years ago. But he gave me these little magic beans. Do you know what I mean? I was like, "Do you want a cow or something?" Like, you know. But he gave me these beans, and he said they are really important. I went, "All right, okay, what are they?" And they were a runner beans, so like your Blue Lake type beans, but they were created in Wales, and no one else had them, only him. But this seed that he had, he'd lost them, and he found them years later. And he said, "I've got these. I got 25 of the seed left. I'm going to be giving up. I want you to have them." And you know, I sowed those 25 seed, and all of those seed germinated. And that seed must have been 15, 20 years old, and they all germinated. It's absolutely crazy. And this is why I tell people, you know, when you're collecting your own seed is really important, because that seed is already acclimatized to your local area and all your microclimates. So it's much more resilient than seed that's been purchased from a store that was probably come from a totally different environment, and then it comes to your environment and it struggles. So it's always better if you can collect your own seed.
Yeah. But that's so cool. I love the history of things, and I love that seed was that old. That is so cool.
It was crazy. And like, he gave me a tub of a different bean seed, and I've still got that tub, and I think it's probably been, you know, stored in my shed for the last 10 years, and I've never gone to plant them because I haven't needed them. But, you know, I should plant some of them this year, just bring them on so I can get fresh seed from it.
Yeah.
Just to be able to keep it going, you know. But there is hundreds and hundreds of bean seed in that tub, so, you know, but just to keep the variety going, like, excuse me.
Well, you know what? When you have your seeds, you could grow pretty much anywhere. Only if you have good microbial life in your garden, in your soil. If you don't have that life in your soil, your plant is not going to grow healthy. Period.
No, and the microbial life is key. And you know, I'm a massive fan of making homemade compost. You know, I make about 9 or 10 ton of the stuff a year, and it's why I wrote my first book was Composting Masterclass, and it was all about the microbial life and how that works within the soil and how it works in the compost, and how to produce the most nutrient dense compost for your plants. Because like this 6 inches of soil video is all about that soil, and people don't realize it. You know, when we're going and feeding our plants, we are not feeding the plant, we're feeding that soil, and then that soil is providing the plant what it needs. And that's why people put humus and, you know, organic matter like manures and things on this soil. We're feeding the soil, not the plants, guys. And as soon as people realize that, then it changes the gardening game to a whole new level for people.
Yeah.
And a nutritional aspect, and helping with your health and diseases, and on and on.
Yeah, because those micro and macronutrients are all being taken up by those plants. But when you feed that soil bio, and you're increasing the numbers because of that. There's a huge population going on. They are all, you know, putting their feces into the soil. They're eating each other. So those, you know, and stuff like that, and carcasses are all dying. And, you know, as they live and die in that soil, all of those nutrients become available. They're breaking down rock and stuff so that all the minerals are available. You know, it's a real fascinating world that's going on right beneath their feet, and you don't realize it. And then, but when you do understand a little bit of that, and then you take that into the world of composting, then you open up a whole different game, like, you know.
What's crazy, the governments we're washing our seeds, all those microbes that are, everything that's on that seed, we're washing all the good stuff away these days. We're washing it, we're power washing it, we're doing everything we get, everything off that seed.
I think the worst thing this world has ever seen is companies like Monsanto and stuff that, you know, that everything has been designed to, like, all the chemical fertilizers and stuff is polluting our rivers and oceans, killing our fish and everything else, but it's killing all the microbiome and the biology and the bacteria and the fungi in the soil, and that's what sustains the soil. And without that, you ain't growing anything. And what it does, it makes, and the farming issue is prevalent because, you know, years and years and years ago, everything was done by horse, and maybe, you know, a plow that was being dragged by a horse or an ox or something like that, you know. So you could only plant up certain areas of a field, and then you plant something else somewhere else. Now, you know, they're farming hundreds of hectares with a monocrop, and it's just, you know, and these seed, they, you know, they're taking them out of the packet and they're blue because they've dyed them with a chemical for pest control and this, that, and the other. So you become so reliant on the chemicals that the farmers have no choice but to then go and buy their seed, because that's the only thing that will grow in the soil that they've created.
Yeah.
I mean, there is so much sort of studies that have gone on now that, you know, bringing back, you know, the soil health and everything else. You don't even have to crop rotate when you've got good soil health. I mean, Gardener Scott and I done a live stream, I think it might be 2 years ago now, and about crop rotation and why neither of us crop rotate is because we put so much work into the soil. We don't need to. We don't have the pest and the monocropping, because once we take out potatoes, for argument's sake, another crop is going straight in after. So effectively, you are doing a crop rotate just by replanting, you know, other produce straight after it. And the biggest thing people can do for their soil is keep it covered, whether that's with like a you know, a cover crop, a green manure or something like that, or whether it's with a mulch. You know, keep that soil covered so it doesn't erode, and the soil life always has something to eat, even in winter. You know, that's the important thing. Keep that keep them multiplying so that society is still building in the grounds, you know, and that's when you'll see massive improvements in your vegetables.
So in the United States, cover cropping is, I think it's just starting. Nobody's ever really even heard about it.
Yeah,
I think if you question our chat, I think maybe 2 people. I mean, it's that slim.
So I've been using cover crops for the last 13 or 14 years, every single year. As soon as a bed is no longer needed for growing food in, a cover crop is sown in it. Now I tend to use, it depends on your loading, because the great thing about cover crops is there's always something that you can use. So if you've had like a disease or something like white rot, onion white rot, for argument's sake, you can use a clover or something like that. That's a biofumigant. Okay, so when it rots down, it actually kills off this disease as well. Now, most people, when they get something like white rot, they never grow onions in the same place, or garlic, you know, the onion family, in the same place again because of this onion white rot. But if you use a biofumigant, which is clovers and things like that, that are going to die off with the first frost, well, that is going to be really good, because that can help to eradicate those sorts of soil-borne diseases. But I tend to do a lot of legumes, so hairy vetch and field beans. So at the moment, all of my beds at the allotment, because I've had a big project on this year, which people will see it in a later video, but I'm just coming to the end of it now. So I decided not to grow anything through winter this year. So all of the beds, bar the polytunnels, which were used as dumping grounds, had field beans or hairy vetch sown into them, and they're all still growing now, even though we've had some major hard frosts here.
Oh, okay, that's good.
But what that does is you've got these root structures in the soil still feeding the bacteria, the fungi, the microbes, you know, all the paths are wood chipped, so that's feeding all the fungi and everything else. And those plants, because they're legumes, they are now pulling nitrogen from the air, and they are storing that on nodules on their root systems. Now, nitrogen is one of the most expensive and hardest to find nutrients for the garden, especially organically, okay? So if you can do this by planting a cover crop, when you terminate that crop, now I tend to be no dig for about 95% of my garden, even though I'm not adverse to digging, okay? But I try not to if I can help it. So, so because I'm no dig, I wouldn't rotivate or turn that into the ground. What I would do though is I'd cut the top off that. That would end up in my compost, so eventually it'd end up back in the ground, but the root systems stay in the ground. And what happens is they rot off, all that nitrogen is released into the ground, ready for the crop that's going to follow it. So it's a really good system for controlling all of this sort of stuff. And it stops erosion, it stops your ground being compacted by the rain over winter. You know, it's just fabulous stuff.
Nice. Yeah.
Now, since
well, you have raised beds too, right?
So
how does that work? Because I would create a bigger, it seems like a bigger problem for myself.
So I have raised beds and I grow in the ground. Okay, so I have both. So the raised beds, you can literally just plant it up exactly the same. Okay, and you would just go in there rather than you using a hoe or a strimmer to take it down afterwards. You just use like a hand shears, just cut it down, take the top growth off, and just plant straight through it then with whatever you're planting.
That's
right.
Definitely
There's no reason. Honestly, it's fantastic for controlling all of this. If you're not going to grow a cover crop, then you need to find another way of keeping the soil microbes alive. Now, a lot of people use these plastic sheeting or the, the ground fabrics and things like that. So they will do, they'll stop the erosion, if you like, but they won't stop the compaction. They usually tend to be a place that slugs tend to lay their eggs underneath. And then, so you're multiplying your pest issue, but also you're not feeding the soil life below. So if you can't put like a cover crop in, at least put a mulch on there, because that mulch can be utilized as a food source as well. Leaves or leaf mold, grass clippings, all of this sort of stuff can still do the protection, but because it's organic, it can still be eaten by the microbial life that's in the ground.
That was such great info.
Yeah, that was awesome because, I would say about 70% of my garden is raised beds, and then we do the tomatoes directly in the ground. But,
yeah. Well, I mean, before I was at this place, so 10 years ago, some of the very first videos back in 2012 were at my old site that I was at, and that was all raised beds. There was no in-ground growing. So, and I grew cover crops in there every single year as well. So there's no reason that you can't grow a cover crop in a raised bed. Just maybe choose the type of cover crop that you're going to grow, because you don't want to get in too tall that the wind is going to take it. But there is so many, like, I mean, even now, the cover crops in the ground, and we're now in February, is still probably only about 10 inches tall. Excuse me. They're only about 10 inches tall, but by April they would be like 3 feet tall, so but I'm not putting nothing in the ground until the last frost, which is the middle of May for me. So, I can terminate that crop in the beginning of May. All that can end up in the compost, because I'm not having to wait for it to break down in the soil before I plant anything. The root systems will just rot around the new plants that are there, feeding them as the year goes on. And it's a fabulous way in which to have a slow release fertilizer as well built in.
And my chickens would probably eat all those on the top.
The one, and the one good thing about it is it stops compaction, because as these roots are rotting down, what it's doing is opening up airways, little channels that air and water can all flow through. So you don't get waterlogging, you don't get soils that go anaerobic because of lack of air. And it's why it's if you're using cover crops for no dig systems, it's fantastic, because that creates the airways for you without you having to open that soil up and breaking all of the hyphae and fungi sort of networks and stuff. So it's really good.
That's great information, really, because it helps me tremendously, because I like I said, I have raised beds, so I need to figure out something. We usually just cover them, but
Yeah,
I would like to
try a cover crop.
continue to grow something.
Yeah, try a cover crop. If you can continue to grow something in that soil, because after all, look, what we're doing here is just mimicking nature. Because you know all too well, if you dig a raised bed and you leave it for a few weeks, it's going to be covered in weeds in no time at all.
Yeah.
And that's nature doing its thing. It's protecting its soil. It's protecting erosion, from erosion and this, that, and the other. Otherwise, the winds are going to take that soil away. And before we know it, we end up with no soil. So you put a cover crop straight in there, you don't get the weeds. And eventually those weed seeds, because you're not digging it so much, are not coming through. And the great thing is with most cover crops, you can just, little sprinkle sowing. You haven't even got to like dig them in and plant them.
Yeah.
So you can just chuck them on the surface and just leave them do their own thing. The only thing you need to stop is the birds from eating them while they're germinating,
Yeah. My chickens, it's so funny. The yard is right next to my garden, but I have like a fence, that blocks them. So every time I do any type of seeds, they all just stare at me like, I know.
Yeah, mine are the same.
I know what you're doing.
Mine are the same. We had like a massive storm come through a little while ago. I thought it was ripping the roof off the house, and my poultry's in a cage. It's about, I don't know, 17 feet wide by about 24 foot long. So they're in there. They've got a coop inside, and I created a new door in the other end so I could get a wheelbarrow in it to make life easier, because the door that was built within the cage wasn't wide enough for a wheelbarrow. And I put a little brass bolt lock thing on there just to be able to lock the door. And the wind was that bad that it opened that door. And of course, I got one of these automatic doors for the coop. It opened up in the morning and the birds were all out, and I come up the plot and they were all over the place. And I was like, oh God, I'm shaking corn in a can trying to get them all back in.
Oh no.
But they dug up so much wood chip, and turned it all over. They're fantastic for stuff like that, and I also use a lot. What I do is I do like a deep litter bedding in the actual run, which is just literally bark chip, but it's really deep, and I just keep topping that up all year. And then once a year, I empty all of that out, and then that goes in as a compost ingredient.
Yeah.
Because it's such great stuff, and it's already
chicken manure is like phenomenal. We put that in our beds last year, and I had a jungle because of that.
Yeah,
it's just
so much nitrogen in it, but it does need composting,
I have an exercise for you. An exercise, and not lifting exercise. If you closed your eyes, don't do it yet. If you closed your eyes and think of like, I always call it the book of life. We all write our own book, and you're looking at your gardening adventures from the beginning to the end. Just close your eyes for 5 seconds or a little longer.
Okay,
and what do you see of your gardening adventures?
I see a walled garden. So an old typical English walled garden back from like the 40s and 50s with huge greenhouses. So the vegetable gardens in like big manor houses, way back, used to have like 9 or 10 foot wall gardens right around them. Fantastic for protecting crops against the wind and things, which is one thing I have an issue with where I'm at. And it's also really good for espaliering fruit trees around, because you're able to attract the sun through the day, and that gives out heat in the night. And it also helps to cut down on the frosts as well. And then I'd love, have you guys ever seen Kew Gardens? It's a big greenhouse, public space. Yeah. So I'd love massive greenhouses like that. And I'd want one for being able to have all of my fruit and veg in and things like that. And then another for all the tropical plants and things
so
that
you could grow your bananas.
And I could grow my own bananas. I finally find that 1001 way that worked.
It's so funny that you say that, because I live in Ohio. It's Northeast Ohio, so it's cold here. There's no way I could ever grow a banana, but I had hopes. I wanted to grow. I found pink bananas. I was like all about it. I wanted to grow them, but it's not.
You could. You just have to do it inside. You'd have to have lighting and heating. You can control that environment if you really want to do it. You could do it in the Antarctic, you know, and but it's cost versus benefit, isn't it? So at the moment, I am trying to push the boundaries with what I have at the garden. If I really wanted to do it, they'd be in this room along with all of those plants.
Oh my gosh!
I got plants everywhere. They'd be in here. This room.
Plants in there, but I didn't know it was like that.
Yeah, I've got a few here and some very rare plants in here as well. So they would just be in here, and they would do well in here because it's heated to about 28 degrees in here naturally, and I would just have to provide the light it needs, and they would do it in here. But that wasn't the goal I set myself. It was to do it up there, which is what I'm still trying to do.
It's funny, when I close my eyes, I think of two things. Well, one's pizza, because I didn't eat pizza last night. Pizza's friendly. And the second thing is a garden with a greenhouse in the center and a whole bunch of beds all the way around it. And, well, for me, all fenced in. I don't want to see my neighbors around.
Don't get me wrong, that would be a dream, my own land with that sort of setup, but I'm really lucky in what I have. I have a real large space. I mean, I have 2 polytunnels that are 36 foot long by 18 foot wide each. I've got a 85-foot long fruit cage. I've got beds everywhere, so and I now have like a 21,000 litre water storage system for it as well to be able to support it all. But that's what I've created since I've been there, and I think one thing people really struggle with is they go onto a garden and they want it all done now. They want it all set up exactly how they want, and they don't realize that gardens are ever evolving. Like, I'm the project that I've been doing for the last month or so. I told you earlier on about the old guy who had the plot next to me, and I took over his plot when he went a few years ago. Okay. And on there, he'd built all of these sheds that were made from nailing doors and windows together. It wasn't even built tidy, they were leaning, and I spent probably a year taking most of them down. But there was one there that was quite handy, and it became part of the well-being garden I designed a few years ago. But we had a couple of bad storms, and then instead of it standing up like this, it went like that. So the project I've had is making that structure usable again, and it's nearing completion. But my point is, that's taken me probably 3.5 years to get to that point, which I could do that shed. I've still been using the ground to grow around it, but you can't do everything in one go because you will burn out and you will jack it in, which is what happens to most people. You just do what you can. And the one tip I'll give anybody that's new, because you said that you have quite a few new gardeners on your channel and what have you, is always turn your back to the work. So if you're digging or dealing with the ground, turn the mess behind you, so you only ever see the work that you've done. And psychologically, that will help you win all the time. Because if you're just looking at the ground and you dig this little bit here and then you look up and you just see, 30, 40, 50 feet of weeds, it just destroys your get up and go, if you like, and then you get defeated before you even start. So always turn your back to the work and just work on what you're doing at that time, and just keep going.
Now, who has influenced you in a YouTube world with gardening?
So YouTube, there's a few really good YouTube channels. A couple of them are big because obviously I've known him a long time. So obviously there's Gardener Scott, fantastic channel. He's a master gardener. He knows what he's talking about, but he's down to earth. He's grounded. And I think that's really important. You know, people, I think when you've got someone who doesn't stay grounded and don't want to help others, then, you know, for me, that's a bit of a no-no. He's really grounded. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's a fantastic channel. He does live streams all the time. Two others would be on the bigger channels would be Mark from Self-Sufficient Me. Fantastic channel. Mark and I have been friends for probably close on 12 years.
Wow.
And so Mark and I first started talking when I had the last garden. I've been at this one for 10 years, so it's been a long time. And also Kevin from Epic Gardening. We are good friends as well. We talk quite a lot. And he has just done so good with his channel and what have you, but he gives fantastic information across as well.
Yeah.
And what I like now with Kevin is that he's taking other creators on into his world, which is helping them grow as well. You know, so they are now presenting on his channel, which is a good thing. And for some smaller channels, I like Danny's channel. It used to be the Grapevine Garden. It's now called Grow Up. Danny has got a fantastic channel. He's another Welsh guy, but he's just showing you as it is. He's doing it. He's walking the walk, and he's giving some really good information across as well. So his channel is really good. I like Jane's Growing Garden because I just find Jane funny. She's really batty and stuff, and you know, but you come across these channels over time, and you either gel with the person that's running the channel or you don't, you know. And that's all I can say for people. You need to find, like, I'm not for everybody, right? And Mark won't be for everybody, and Kevin won't be for everybody. But all people need to do is find that channel that they can gel with, and they only need to be a few weeks ahead of you to give you the information that you need to succeed.
Yeah.
You know, but there's so many other channels that I watch. But I watch a lot of channels outside of gardening as well, just thinking, right, they did this really well. How can I use that information in the garden, you know, or on my channel and stuff? I do huge amounts of research for when I'm, you know, when I'm making videos. So but yeah, it's I mean, there's so many small ones that I could be here all day just reeling out channel after channel, you know.
Yeah.
You know what, they have one thing in common: they all have passion.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if you don't have passion for it, especially, you guys know, okay, because you've been around the YouTube game for quite some time, and it can be a drain sometimes. Yeah. You know, you've got to put a video out. You've got to go and film that video. You've got to plan that video, film it. You've got to edit it. Then you've got to do all the, like, the SEO stuff, and you've got to upload it on time. You've got to decide when you're going to release it. And then you've got to be there to answer all the questions that come. And as you get bigger and bigger, you know, I'm doing probably 8,000 questions a day coming through my channel at the moment. It's just impossible for me to answer them all. You know, so what I've had to do is say to people, right, what I'm going to do, I really want to answer your questions. So those who respond or put a question or a comment in within the first 2 hours of a video going live, you'll definitely get a response. And that's what I do now, because I can't physically do it. And as the channel gets bigger, you've got a massive back catalogue as well. It's not just your new videos that you're getting these questions on. You know, you're getting questions on the 500 or 600 videos behind you as well. So but yeah, I mean, it's huge amounts of work. So you've got to be passionate about it, not just the gardening, but the YouTube side as well, because, you know, you've just got to be able to balance that to make sure that I say, and again, you have to be passionate, or it comes across so bad in a video that it sticks out like a sore thumb, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's how my favorite channel. It's all about people with passion. For me, like, and my gardener I grew up with when he started, And
Yeah,
it was
I like
just,
Luke.
it was just passion, you know,
Yeah.
passion.
And Luke's done really well as well, haven't he? You know, it's like I said, there's so many channels I could just reel off to you guys, you know, but I would just be, you know, all day doing it. Because one thing I'm quite a big believer of is supporting the community, and there's probably not many channels that won't say I've been on their channel commenting, or on their live streams commenting, or whatever the case being. You know, I'm always happy to be supporting other people as well. You know, and that's what it's about at the end of the day.
Okay, here's a question for you. Here's a question. I'm sorry, Quirky, if I'm keep on rattling.
You're fine.
There's a lot of people on YouTube starting their channels. Any recommendations for them to grow? Because they think all this money's involved, and no. They think they get all these views and everybody in the world are going to tune into the channel right away. No.
Okay. So here's what you don't want to hear. Right. Okay. So the first goal for any YouTube subscriber is to get that 4,000 hours of watch time and 1,000 subscribers, because they want to get monetized. Okay. And what they'll find is that their first check is probably going to be something like 50 cents or something. It is just such a small amount. That compounds with the years of work, okay? So if you're thinking that you're going to come into YouTube and build a channel and it take off like that, and you don't have to, you know, you're going to be like this YouTube superstar within like 6 months, it very rarely happens. It does happen, but it's very rare that happens, especially with topics like gardening. That tends to be, you know, like something that has that virality around it. It's very hard to get a viral video in a topic like gardening, okay? So, but the advice I would give you is, and it would probably go against a lot of other advice, okay? When you first start, you're going to understand that you don't have the skill set required to produce awesome videos, okay? You know, you maybe first time editing, first time being on camera, you know, you're going to be, you know, a lot of people will tell you they're really nervous when they first start talking to cameras. I was like that. You overcome it, okay? But initially, your first videos probably aren't going to be your best videos. And I look back on videos I'd done a couple of weeks ago and type of thing, and I'm still like, oh, why did I do that? You know, you'll always criticize your own videos. All right. So realize that your first videos aren't going to be your best videos, but still make those videos, because it's important that you do. The first thing you need to do is actually go press record and get that video uploaded. Okay. Because they will start finding your tribe. Don't start sharing them with your friends and your parents and everything else, getting them to subscribe to you just to get a couple of subscribers, because the YouTube algorithm will serve up your next video to them. They won't watch it, and then it kills the video. Okay. So just let YouTube find, you know, your audience for you over time. And if you do things right, they will. So initially you need to keep uploading quite consistently. As you get bigger, you'll be able to step that back to maybe weekly. But if you can get up 2 or 3 times a week, great. Because what this is going to do, it's not going to allow you to grow huge amounts. It's going to allow you to build the skill set of pressing record on the camera, you know, presenting on the camera, coming up with the topics that you need to make it, and, you know, and being able to edit all of that into some sort of, consistent video that you can put online, okay? And that's what the amount of videos is going to do for you. But it's important the type of video you make, because what a lot of people do is they come in and they say, right, today I'm going to go down the allotment or the garden, and I'm going to be doing this, so I'll just film that. For argument's sake, say now they go to the garden and they're just going to be weeding, and they just show weeding. Well, no offense, no one's looking for weeding. You've got to think of the topic, okay? And initially, when you're first starting a channel, the way you're going to get found is via search. So everything needs to be a search-based video, okay? So you know, how to plant pumpkins, how to plant kale, how to do this, how to clean a shed, all of these basic things. And what you're looking for there is to pick up those people who are just searching for that. But that's not where the big views are in YouTube, and you won't get, you need to get into suggested and home, which you'll come after you've probably got around 10,000 subscribers. So everything up to 10,000 subscribers, I would say keep search based, okay? Because you'll get found. And what's happening in this time that you're getting these videos out and you're getting found is YouTube is going, right, okay, this person here watched this how-to video. They also watched this how-to video that Mark done and this how-to video that Tony done. So it's a good thing that the next how-to video you put out, they're going to enjoy, and they're going to then serve that video up. And that's when you start becoming suggested. And this is why the growth chart, if I was to pull up my growth chart and show you, for years and years and years, it was just flatlined like that. And then all of a sudden I had a little blip, and it came back down to just above where I was. Then I had another little blip. And this is how YouTube works. And eventually it goes boosh, and it just is like a hockey stick growth because you've put all of that work in before. So I'd say just concentrate on like searchable videos. So it doesn't just have to be how to, it can be, you know, something like putting together a tunnel or watering in a tunnel. It can be whatever, but it's got to be able, something that someone will search for. Once you hit around 10,000 subscribers, you need to change strategy straight from search. So nothing should be search based anymore. It should all be based on for home and suggested. So then we're looking for intrigue. We're looking for things that are going to get people thinking, oh, you know, why has he done that? Or things that are going to get people thinking, you know, like my last video I done was I grew 450 pounds of potatoes. I forget the entire title. But I grew 450 pounds of potatoes and whatever it was. In fact, let me pull that up and I'll tell you what it was, because I think the rest of it was quite important. But essentially, if you notice, no one's going to search how do you grow 450 pounds of potatoes, okay? Right. So give me 1 second. Let me just pull it up so I get it right, guys. Because what the point I'm trying to make, right? So the title was I grew 450 pounds of potatoes the lazy way, right? So that's intriguing to people. It's like, right, Christ, how did he grow 450 pounds of potatoes first? And I want to do it the lazy way. I don't want to put in any effort, you know? So this is, so a lot of the titles you see there now, like if you look at see the one at the end on the top, I grew 71 pounds of potatoes by accident. That's really intriguing. People want to know how you did that. And believe it or not, this was one of the most easiest videos I did, because all I was doing was emptying my compost bin. But earlier on in the year, in the in the June time, I'd thrown potato peelings from the home into that compost and they started growing. So I decided not to cover it over and I let them grow. And then when I pulled the compost out, I only set up my mobile phone. I wasn't even supposed to be filming that day. And I was only filming for some B-roll for a composting video I wanted to make, right? But as I started pulling out these potatoes, and then at the end of them, there was like 71 pounds. Well, you know, the video itself, and as you can see, it's done 941,000 views in a year. And then like the last video that I did. So if you scroll right up to the top, keep going there. So there's the 450 pound of potatoes the lazy way. That's done 1.2 million. Yeah. And I also done a one before it, you're wasting money, so I'll never buy potatoes again. Years why? That's done 566,000. They're intriguing titles, and it gets people clicking on the video first. Now, it's all well and good having people click on the video, but you've got to have the content in the video to keep them watching. Okay, that's
I'm jealous of your potato videos. I couldn't get a potato to grow if my life depended on it, and that's amazing.
I have plenty of videos on it.
That's awesome.
But this is the point I'm trying to make. Yeah. So earlier on, I was saying, you know, filming what you want to film is not what people want to watch. You've got to film what people are interested in. Okay. So sometimes, like, I haven't done a video since that one, and that was about 3 months ago. Because I've been busy with other stuff, and I thought, well, I'm going to have a break and get the book sorted and everything else, but I'll be getting back into filming very shortly. But my point is, I knew that topic would do well because it's done well in the past, and it's a topic that people like. Now, if I was to go out there and said that I grew bananas in the UK, yes, that's quite an intriguing video. But what I've done is I've limited my audience. Firstly, I've limited it to the UK. Then I further limited it to people who want to actually grow bananas. Yeah. And in the UK, that's no one.
Yeah.
So that video we're getting maybe 1,000 or 2,000 views at most. Yeah. So you have to look at, you need a topic, the title, and the timing needs to be right. So make videos that people want to watch. So if you wouldn't go to somebody's channel and watch them weeding for half an hour, why do you expect them to go to yours? And the one bit of advice I will give everybody that wants to go onto YouTube is realize that people's time is precious. Cut out all the fluff out of your videos and only make videos that is going to benefit somebody. And then eventually you will find your tribe and they will start sticking around to watch what else you put out. So I hope that helps people.
No, I hope that definitely helps. Helping the beginner to the more advanced or the more, the process.
Yeah, like I said, initially just worry about the search constantly, right? So think of search topics until you're about 10,000. Then you need to switch over to that suggested algorithm and you'll be right then.
Nice. Now, do you use compost tea as a fertilizer?
I do. And in fact, I'm in the process of planning a video for it very shortly. So compost tea is fantastic, especially when you're nailing making your own compost. Okay. Yeah. Remember I was talking earlier on about building that biodiversity in the compost, because there's compost and then there's compost, right? Yeah. Right. So, so once you get that really loaded compost with all the microbial life and everything, excuse me, then that's the stuff to make your compost tea from. And what you're doing when you're making compost tea, you're tenfolding the amount of microbes and biology that's in there before you put it on the ground. But it's no good putting it on the ground unless you've got the stuff in the ground that's microbes and things need to feed on. I've seen people spraying ground that is like just barren soil. There's nothing in there at all. They have put no organic matter in there. As soon as they spray this stuff on, those microbes are going to die because they've got nothing to eat. You've got to feed them. But compost tea is fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
Now, potting soil, when you start your from seed, what do you use? Do you use your own? Do you sift? What do you do for your potting soil?
Okay. Excuse me. So one of them videos that you showed earlier on was where I tested a load of bagged soil from the stores. Yeah. It's very poor here at the moment because we're going through a process of where we are banning peat. Keep scrolling and I'll tell you, it might be on the second page actually. Keep scrolling on it and I'll tell you where it is. There. Right, see that? See that? Not all compost is created equal video. That one there. Okay, so basically, I went through like 13 bags of bagged soil from the stores, and I put it against my home compost, and they were just absolutely rubbish, and I spent a lot of money on those bags. And the reason for it is we are in the process of banning peat. It gets banned this year in this country, and all of the compost makers are really struggling to find a bulking agent for their compost. So they are putting in all of the green waste, they're grinding up chipboard, the compressed chipboard for building materials, and all sorts of stuff is going in there. And it's really poor quality.
Yeah.
One brand I've always used is a brand called Clover Compost. And I thought this year, right, I'll buy 30 sacks of this just to keep for seed sowing, because it's always been really good. And I'll buy it before the peat is banned. Excuse me. But I opened a bag the other day to actually sow, and it's worked well. As you can see on the floor down there, is a load of chilies that have come up in the propagator. Okay, so it's growing okay in them, but the quality of it was absolutely horrendous. Now, I've used that stuff for probably 15 years, no problems at all, but it's come out, it's like huge pieces of wood in it. So obviously they are trying to bulk out and not use so much peat, maybe trying to wean people off, but it was dreadful. And this is the problem with potting soils and bagged compost and things, is that you can buy one brand today in one shop, and you can go and buy the same brand the next day in the same shop, and there'd be completely different stuff in the bags. And this is the issue with it. You know, one day it could be fantastic stuff, and you think, do you know what, I'm going to go and buy 20 sacks of that. You go and buy 20 sacks, and the other 19 are complete rubbish. And there's no consistency with it.
Yeah.
So I tend to mix a lot of my own. Like I said, I have got this 30 bags of clover now, which I'm using because I've done a refurb on my compost bays this year. So all of the compost and everything is all dumped on the garden. On the one bed, I haven't actually put green manure in because there was stuff stored there.
Yeah.
And you'll see that in an upcoming video anyway. But I wanted to overhaul the compost bays this year. So I've got no major compost. So I've bought these 30 bags anyway. So I'll be using those throughout the year for various things, including my potatoes. And when I put all this stuff back into finished composting, that'll be ready then, you know, in August time.
It's kind of concerning because if they're using things like chipboard, which have chemicals and stuff on them, so that's not organic soil at all.
No.
So you're putting that on your garden, and God knows what's in it.
I'll give you an example. Last year, it's so bad. Last year, I did a post on Facebook of 2 members of my audience sent me photos where they had welts and cuts all up their hands from when they put their hands into a store-bought compost, and it burned all the skin on their hands.
Wow.
And on the bag, there was a warning to say, only use with gloves. Now, real compost, you shouldn't have to use gloves with it.
Right.
So if it's burning your skin, do you want to be putting that in your garden where your pets, your children, and everything else, you know, are hanging out, and then you're having to be in there to tend the garden? Why do you want to be doing that?
Yeah, and what exactly was in that to be burning your skin? There shouldn't be.
I reached out to the supermarket in question. I won't mention them, but I reached out to the supermarket in question, and they just wouldn't respond to me. So, and that same stuff is for sale now. So, you know, but this is the thing, you know, you have to be so careful. All they're interested in doing is, don't forget, they're using waste materials to make compost. This isn't, you know, your garden waste and you know, your kitchen scraps and things like that. Yeah, they're using waste materials. You know, I found forks in bagged compost. I found parts of children's nappies in bagged compost. All sorts of stuff that you find in them. And the other day, I found somebody's ring in one. So, you know, you just don't know what you're getting in, because they just chuck this stuff straight through a shredder. Doesn't matter what it is, it comes out the bottom, and then they just put it through a windrow to compost it down. And invariably then they add animal manures into it, and they just, because of the bulk, excuse me. Sorry guys, I'm getting over this cold thing. Because of the bulk that they need, because they're commercial, they're then mixing it with animal manures that have had, you know, pyralites, broadleaf systemic pesticides and herbicides put into them. They putting, you know, manures that have had, you know, cows that have been medicated put into them, and that can be taken up by us because the composting process doesn't kill it. So, you know, and that is ending up in bad compost.
Horrible.
it was one of the reasons why I wrote Composting Masterclass, because when you can make your own compost, you're the king of your domain. When you collect your own seeds, it doesn't matter then whether the government stops you buying compost or whether the government stops you buying seeds to grow your own. You are self-sufficient in what you're able to do. You know, collect your own seeds, you produce your own compost from your waste, you're feeding your soil, you're feeding your microbes, you're growing your own food, you're collecting your own seed. And it's that circle or that cycle that people need to start getting into, because I tell you something, things are going to change over the next 10 years, and I really don't think people can see it coming.
Yeah. I really think that they don't want anyone to farm or grow anything of their own.
They don't. Well, you look at what's happening in France at the moment with all the farmers. You know, they want to shut down all their farms. They're protesting at the moment. You know, we need those farms. You know, yes, we can grow. And the problem we have is the government's pushed farming into a specific direction, right? The supermarkets helped with this as well, because they pushed prices down. So they had to monocrop in order to make it profitable. We need to get away from that, and we need to turn back to like market gardens where the farmer is, you know, planting up small sections, and, you know, and yes, it's going to cost more, but you're going to be looking after your soil. You're going to be getting a better quality product. And, you know, we've had animals roaming our lands, you know, forever. And we've never had any of the problems we got now. You know, the governments are creating these issues because they just all on an agenda. And to me, it's a way of stealth taxes. It's just my opinion, but, you know, that's going off on a bit of a tangent. But, you know, yeah, farmers, and it's coming to gardeners as well. You know, I'm already seeing seeds being controlled and what have you. And the way, like, we were talking earlier on about Monsanto with these blue seeds and these green seeds, is because they're being chemically dipped, because nothing else will grow in their land. So all of a sudden now, you're now tied to just buying seeds from Monsanto because they've killed your land with chemicals, and the microbiology doesn't want to live in that land. You know, there is a way to undo all of this, but again, that is going to be at a cost for the farmer.
Can you buy GMO seeds in the UK?
Yes, you can. But
I didn't know that. You can't just buy them here.
Yeah, you can. There are some seeds now. Most of them are okay in most of the garden centres or online. But there are certain seeds that are slipping in that have been coated, and you open a packet up. If they're not organic and all of a sudden they're blue or they're green or they're red, because they've been coated in this dye for controlling pests and things like that, that's been created because you didn't look after the soil. And this is the thing. If you're looking after that soil, you don't have so many pest issues. I've not had slug damage on my garden for I can't remember how long, because I use nematodes and I create those myself. You know, I've not had blight on my potatoes or my tomatoes for 11 or 12 years, and both gardens either side of me have had blight. Because I've managed the soil, they're good, strong plants, they create the airflow they need, you know. So, you know, and that's what this book is designed to do, is to give you that information so that you are getting the best possible scenarios for each of those veg groups.
Yeah.
So that you're creating the airflow, you're creating the good microbial life.
You're going to have to get your book. I don't have it yet, but I'm going to have to get it.
Oh, you
because
need to get
there's certain things I'm horrible at growing. And pretty much all brassicas and potatoes. Those are the things I'm horrible at growing.
Yeah.
So.
And again, you know, I mean, like that last potato video, I take through the entire process of what it takes for me to produce those potatoes and that volume. And you'll notice in the video, it's in a really small, so that £450 one.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a really small environment as well. We're talking like less than 200 square feet. I done a video a few years ago. I think it's probably on like page 3 or 4, that I grew £235 of potatoes in 200 square feet with no water. I think that's on like, that's done like 2.1 million views or something, you know?
I can't. So do you know what I could do with 450 pounds of potatoes? I would can those up. I wouldn't have to grow potatoes for years.
Yeah, and this is the thing. But if you notice, right, I got lots of potato things because they're one of my favorite things to grow, and I've got very good at it, you know. So, but keep going, and I'll see. There it is on the right hand side. Stop on the right hand side there. Yeah. So that one there, without watering, it's done 2.1 million views in 3 years.
Wow.
Again, it's the exact same principles, but in that very last video I done, I walk through it and I give tips like don't pull about pulling off the flowers on potatoes, because that's just wasted energy. We don't need them. Get rid of them, you know. But I cover pretty much everything right through, you know, setting up gardens right the way through to you know, to growing individual things. And that's essentially what this book is. It's that sort of information condensed into a book, you know.
Yeah, nice. So how do you, okay, so you grow all this food, how do you preserve it? Do you can?
So I don't can. I have quite a large chest freezer out there, 6 feet by about 4 feet, I think. So it's quite a large chest freezer. We do a lot of dehydration. But a lot of the crops that we get can be stored in just a cool environment, as cool, dark environment, and people fall away from things like that. So your potatoes, you can literally just, I've got a video on this, but there's like multiple ways, but you can put them back in the buckets they came out of and just put a small compost cap over the top. You can just stack them up in a shed and they'll be, I'm still eating last year's potatoes now, and they'll still be there when I'm harvesting, or when I'm due to harvest the next ones. Same thing with carrots, same thing with cabbage. You know, you can hang a cabbage upside down from like a rafter in a shed or something, and you know, only the outer leaves will start to turn. You just peel them off. The rest of the cabbage is fine, you know, and that will last months like that. So there's videos like this that will teach people in, you don't always have to come chop everything up as soon as you harvest it, chuck it in a jam jar and then can it, you know. There are other ways. I'm not saying canning's a bad thing, because it's not, and it's a great way of preserving, yeah, but there are lots of ways to preserve.
Yeah, I still have all my carrots in the ground from last.
Yeah, and again, if you've got things like carrots in the ground, and you know you're not going to have major frosts, then you can literally just either leave them there or put a cloche over them just to help protect them a little bit. If you're going to have the frost and things, I would consider lifting them. But things like parsnips and those sort of things, well, they can stay in the ground. Rutabagas, you know, I harvest. They get chopped up and they get put into the freezer as a rule. But again, you can treat them exactly the same as you would with potatoes. So you literally just put them in a bucket, cover them over with like damp compost and just leave them in there. And they will just sit in there happily until you need them. Effectively, what you're creating is an old-fashioned clump. You're just not burying it.
Yeah.
As long as that room stays cool and dark, that clamp is still there, and then you just harvest them as and when you need them.
Now,
Tony,
I don't know what you guys have there, but we have basements here, so I just store. It's basically a root cellar. So we just
that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
So under my house, I've got. It's not a basement. It's more like a crawl space. It's probably about 4.5 feet high. You know, but I use that, and it's fantastic because it's cold, but it's, you know, dry. It's free from. It's got good airflow, but it's free from allowing any rodents or anything in there. You know, so it's a good space for that. That's what I use.
I'm sorry, Joe. I cut you off and I didn't mean.
No, you're good. Now, your potato video with your setup is amazing. Cork, I don't know if you had a chance to watch his setup, but it's like it's clean. You're never going to get any weeds because everything's covered, basically.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
with the
and-
water system you use, the setup with the wood on the outside, the way you constructed it is absolutely.
But that's
amazing.
taken 13 years to come to that, you know, to that system. Okay, but that system could be set up in a couple of days by somebody, you know. And the thing about it is, what I always, when I grew in containers before, I started growing in containers evidently because we had a pest here called wireworm, and they were boring holes through the potatoes all the time. So, so I started growing in these containers. But of course, initially, the first year I planted in the containers, and then the foliage all flops over. It's in your way. You're stepping on it, trying to water them and what have you. And then I wanted to look at ways of dealing with that. And a couple of years ago, I built a similar frame, but we had like cow wire across the top of it. But what we found was we get storms in the summer, and then the homes would be pushed against that wire. And because it was thin, they would bend over, and then that would crimp the home and it would kill the home off. So I went to this timber structure that you can see there now, and that works fantastic. But what that also does, it not only keeps that foliage up out of my way, it shields the containers from the sun so that they're not getting overheated. And it's a support structure for the watering system. So now, once the potato containers are put under there and I've put that little watering system into the container, it's standalone. So this photo here that you see there is the system with the cow wire on. So so you can see it was working. I just evolved it a little bit more. And that's what I'm saying about, we were talking about your garden's always evolving. So I found ways that potato buckets grew well. I wanted a way to support the foliage. I found this way. And then we went on then to building the timber structure. And eventually I may find something else, or something will annoy me, and then I'll go off and redesign something else for it. But at the moment, it's working fantastic, as you can see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
look at all those potatoes. I'm so jealous.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
I absolutely loved it when I was watching it. I'm like, oh my God. So that's the construction. Now,
And, you know, I mean, most people can do that. You need a handsaw and maybe like electric drill, you know, that you can just screw in. And most people can do something like this. It's hammering the sticks. And the sticks that are in the floor are actually staircase spindles. So I just hammered into the ground, and I got some 2x1 lat, and I just built that framework on top of them. So it's not even like a hard structure to build.
Now I was trying to find your water totes. I keep on clicking on it, like right there. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Yeah. So I'm going to be doing a video now because I've actually got 21 of those at the moment. And every single one of them is interlinked in the garden.
Nice.
So I collect. So the shed I was just telling you about that I've just not rebuilt, but I've redone, is that shed that's behind those totes there, right?
Oh, okay.
So it's now got a whole new roof, and it's much safer. But that roof, in this photo, there's 5 of those IBC totes. So they hold 1,000 litres each. So I think that's like 250 gallons or something. There's a 6th one there now, which is also linked up, but that has the top cut out of it so I can dip a watering can in, okay?
Oh, okay.
Those 6 then not only feed the potato area there via a small pump, but they go on to feed, they link up to 2 IBCs that are outside one of my polytunnels, which are linked up to 2 IBCs inside the polytunnel. The other polytunnel has got another set of 4 IBCs that are fed from the polytunnel and the roof, but they are also linked up to all the ones down the garden. So there's 21 floating around on the garden, which covers about 3 or 4 beds each. So there's 21,000 litres. So I think that's like 5,500 gallons of water that I store at any one time. But like I said, the garden is so big that I do need that, you know, and I will be doing a video on that because I've been asked by lots of people on it. So
yeah,
I'm going to show how it all works.
To do that. I have like a watering system set up where I save water, but it's not enough. Like I could probably go through that in 1 week.
Well, I had 18,000 litres last year, and I ran out when we had the really dry spell. And although there is taps on the allotment, the problem you have with a community garden is everybody wants to use them at the same time. and the pressure there is not very good anyway. So this year I bought another 3 of those IBCs and linked them within the garden, so that ups it now another 21,000. And that should hopefully see me through.
You'll never have to use the community water. You have your own, and your
rainwater is better. And this is what I'm saying to people about, if you can, is creating that system within yourself so you're not reliant on others. If the government came in and said, do you know what, none of you are gardening, we're going to cut the water off, well, I'd be okay. I have water, and this is my point. It's about putting systems in place. Number one, to make it easier for you. Number two, to make it better for the plants, because rainwater is always better than tap water or city water, whatever you want to call it. And number three, it's about not having to have the issue, because there's a law on our allotment saying that you can only hand water, because they didn't want water being wasted by people connecting up a hose pipe to the tap. Okay. But I'm free of that law, because the water on my garden I've collected. So because of that, I can do whatever I want to. Not that I would waste it by using a hose pipe. I run drip irrigation for certain things, and I hand water other things,
Yeah. I really love the drip irrigation. Right now, I basically hand water my entire garden, except for like a couple of things. But yeah, I love the drip irrigation. That's definitely going to be something.
It's been a lifesaver with the potatoes, because they require to stay moist. But once that foliage is right up there, if you can avoid having to get in between every single row, then it saves space. So I can condense it. So I still got a path up. So I got like 2 containers, then a small path, then another 2 containers built within those frameworks. Okay. And I got a path right around it. But because I don't need to get there, I could potentially put like pots of carrots along there, or whatever the case being, I can put other potted things right up next to them if I wanted to. So it allows you to utilize space that you wouldn't necessarily be using.
You're making me want carrots really bad right now. It's like one of my favorite vegetables.
Well, in that bed that you saw next to where I was stood with all them potatoes, that bed is full of sand. And if you go back to my video a second, Joe, don't go into the video, but just pull up the videos. So scroll down a bit. Oh, there, 3 foolproof ways of growing carrots. And I show in this video, in the bed next to them potatoes is a bed full of sharp sand. And I core out that sand and just put compost in there, and I grew carrots in there. And I was pulling out carrots that were 3 feet long this year. So I've got some fantastic photos over Facebook. The carrots, I didn't have one fork carrot. They were all really long and straight.
Nice.
So, but this is where talking about this. But what happens with that bed, if you skip along, you'll see me filling it up at some point. And,
oh my gosh, look at those carrots.
This isn't the bed. This is a different bed. But in the bed you're creating a column of just compost, and that forces that carrot to be dead straight. I wish I could. I later on, guys, I will show you a photo. I don't think you'll see it on my phone. Give me a moment. Let me see if I can pull it up on here for you to. You might just get the gist of it on the phone.
I thought I was a really good carrot grower until now.
Look at those carrots there. Well, let me get me.
Wow.
Give me 1 second, guys. I know we're. But I also use it for parsnips as well. I'll give you some sort of idea.
Those are huge.
I'll stay right there.
Oh.
Can you? I don't know if you guys can make this out. Can you see the parsnips?
Yes.
So that's the parsnips, and the carrots. This is one of the carrots I was pulling out of there.
Nice.
Right, and but they were all coming out really, really good. I got a bunch of them I've just pulled out down.
Hey, it all starts with
so many.
I don't know if we could get them here. What kind of carrot seeds or what kind of carrots?
So I use a variety called Sweet Candle, and they are a fantastic variety. And
wow.
So that's growing in that bed that's next to it. So that was the results. You know, they were fabulous carrots, and you know, and this is them cleaned up on the counter.
Nice.
So you know, so you haven't got to, you know, this is what I'm saying. Like if you grow carrots in the ground, and I failed loads of times with it. They'd fork. They'd be little pointy little things like this. You pull them out. It's still edible. Don't get me wrong, but I like to, you know, grow nice big things and push the boundaries of things. And the carrots themselves, you know, I found that doing them in the sand, you know, I was able to get a better thing. And as going back as far as pushing boundaries, I'll just show you one more photo, if you can just bear with me 1 second, because I think it will show. It will show you guys that, you know, you haven't got to just listen to, you know, people with certain things. I think I've just passed it, bear with me. But you find that, you know, people will listen to some people and they say, oh, it's got to be done this way, but just test, like, you know.
How often do you test your soil?
So I test my soil once every 3 years, but I'll do a pH test every year. Okay. When I'm testing my soil, I'm sending my soil away to a lab every 3 years. Okay. So this was me pushing the boundaries of trying to grow a cabbage.
Oh, wow.
So,
too much
you know,
sauerkraut I can make with that, Joe.
So, but this is what I'm saying. Like, don't be afraid to try. You know, that cabbage was 67 pounds in weight, and I've got like zucchini there that is, you know, like there. These are zucchinis. They're 131 pounds in weight. You know, so just don't be afraid to try and push the boundaries.
That's
now,
the biggest zucchini I've ever seen. That's awesome.
But you're not allowed to enter our contest.
But I do that just to try and push the boundaries of things, okay? And understanding what that plant or that group of plants needs will allow you to get better produce, and that shows that. That's what's in here, effectively, right? It's about understanding how that plant is going to work. It's the science behind it, you know, and the microbial life and things like this. Once you nail that and you understand it, you can get results like that, or you can grow really good potatoes or whatever the case being is. Don't, like, before I had those, I failed lots. Don't be afraid to fail, you know, just keep going, go, that didn't work, but what if I do this, you know, and eventually you will find what works in your microclimate and you'll get fantastic results. And eventually, you know, everything starts falling into place because, like, I've nailed the potatoes, I've nailed the zucchini, I've nailed the carrots, I've nailed the beans, so now I can't say I guarantee a good garden, but I can guarantee I've been self-sufficient for the last 12 years, you know, so and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, part of our channel, Grow Big, was about growing the biggest nutritionist vegetables you could grow. That zucchini.
Well, all of those, like I said, I was growing those for just to push the boundaries and to show them and things like that. But they didn't get wasted. They all went off to a homeless shelter, and they were made into soups and things like that to provide meals for people who were homeless. So they never got wasted, you know. And they were fine to eat. They weren't bitter or anything because of the way they were grown.
Did you ever enter any of those competitions, growing your biggest vegetables and things like that?
Yeah. So every year, the Malvern Autumn Show does giant vegetables, and the one of those zucchinis, the 131 pound in weight one, was entered into Malvern about 4 or 5 years ago. and it didn't even place. That's how big some growers are, you know. But again, it was my personal best. I'll be growing them again now later this year. But don't forget, I'm growing organically. They weren't. They were growing chemically because they're not interested in you know, they were only interested in one thing, and that was to grow big. For me, I wanted organic ways of finding to do these things because people are going to eat it afterwards.
Right, right.
You know? So, and also I wouldn't put a chemical near my ground. So there's that trade-off there. I can make something go mental if I put chemicals on it, but I'm not prepared to do that just to get something huge, you know?
Right.
And you don't always need something to be big, you know? I like big potatoes because they make better jackets and they make better fries and things like that. But you know, and the kids absolutely love mashed potatoes, so and roasts, and you know, so it's easier when you've got larger spreads, and they store better the bigger they are because they've got more moisture within them, so they don't dry out as much and start sprouting and things like that. So yeah,
I love it. I just want to say, everybody, thank you for coming to watch this live today. I appreciate that. Thank you.
This was amazing. Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous of your carrots and your potatoes. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. You have inspired me. Like,
well, there's plenty of videos for you to go and watch.
I can't wait to watch them all because you have inspired me. Maybe I will do potatoes again this year. I know.
Good, and make sure you send me the photos when you harvest them.
Okay, yeah, because in the years past they have not. They're okay. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not like that. I can tell you that.
So watch a few videos, see how I get around it, and you know, and that'll help you. And like I said, you know, it's all about supporting the plant in what it needs. And once you get that, and I don't just mean in feeding them, because overfeeding can be just as bad as underfeeding, you know. But supporting the foliage so that they don't flop over and prematurely die off. You know, because when they're doing that, then they're not feeding the tubers. It's about little tips like removing the flowers, you know, you remove the flowers.
Yeah.
Well, see, a lot of people say, oh, yeah, keep the flowers on there. That's when you know the potatoes are growing. Well, think about it, right? What's a plant doing when it's producing flowers?
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. That's the same with like radishes and any of that. If they start to flower, that's it. Yeah.
Well, what a potato is doing, though, is it's using energy to produce the flower and then the seed pod afterwards. We're never going to use that seed pod because we use potatoes. Yeah. So why are we allowing it to do that? That energy could be better utilized in tuber formation. So if we remove the flowers every time they come, that energy has to be put somewhere. So it gets put into potatoes. And that's, you know, a small little thing, but it makes a massive difference.
Yeah. So,
just to let you guys, because we have a lot of people from, I'm hoping a lot of people from the UK watch this. If you guys are new, welcome to the channel. We are having six competitions growing your largest vegetables this year. One's the Dr. Wychee tomato, the Detroit red beet. We got a zucchini, to either the Fort Hook or Black Beauty, Peter pepper, mammoth sunflower, and the watermelon radish.
Yeah,
so
and we already have a video out for the watermelon radish. I can't wait to grow that. There's so many things I've learned about that watermelon radish and using the tops for pesticides and stuff like that. Like, I can't wait to like make my own things from it. So I'm excited.
Now
plants are amazing.
They are amazing. What for the beginner gardeners out there? What's the easiest thing to grow in a garden?
It's going to be like radish and things like that. They're really quick. You see results pretty much within weeks, and there's something they can pull out and eat, right? So that then allows them to get excited enough to have the longer crops and to try the longer crops, you know. So something that's short for kids, things like cress, let them sow their name in cress in a bed or something like that, and just leave that grow so they can see their own name. And you know, it's about doing those little things that, you know, that'll get them excited to try something a bit bigger. One thing my kids absolutely love, because I grow my potatoes in containers, there's a video on my channel where my my two youngest are on there. They're about, I don't know, 5 and 6, I think, something like that. And I was emptying a bucket of potatoes into a wheelbarrow, and they were losing their minds over these potatoes, you know, and because kids absolutely love it, because to them it's like treasure hunting.
Right.
You know, you just let them dig through it. Those sorts of things really make a big difference with getting people to stick with it. They have to see those small wins first. So things that are quick, you know, your radishes and your lettuce and those sort of crops, get them going. Once they've had that little taste of it, the bug will set in, and then you can push the longer growing crops then afterwards.
And so we got to the easiest. What's the hardest thing you have ever grown? What has been your biggest? Is there a biggest nemesis for growing of it?
Bananas. If you're just talking like normal veg, I think one of the hardest things that I've had to grow is things like butternut squash, believe it or not. Now, I grow squash till they're coming out of my ears normally, but for some reason, butternut never get to the size I really want them to. They grow, don't get me wrong, but they never, you know, I'm looking at, like, for argument's sake, there's a variety called Hunter, and they get about this long, you know, with a bulb on the end of it. And but when I do them, like, I get the bulb and then the neck is about this long type of thing. And the squash is perfectly edible and it's fine. I think I just need to sow them that little bit earlier. But the problem we have is when they can go outside, because, like I said, it's like end of May before our last frost is. So, you know, and I got an open site, so that's why a walled garden would have been nice. But, you know, it is what it is. That's one of the ones that I always struggle with. And I will find a way to get that longer, whether or not I just need to plant it a little bit earlier to give it a longer season or what, and just sort of nurture it through until I can put it out, you know.
Well, it's always interesting because everybody always has something.
Butternut squash is so wild. I've had that thing go all the way over, all over my garden, up and over my fence. My chickens hollow them out on the other side. Like that butternut squash is like it's wild.
I mean, I grow Crown Prince and spaghetti and loads of different squash. And what I do some years, like I said, I've got a very large fruit cage. I tend to plant them in the fruit cage and just let them sprawl all over the floor in the fruit cage, because that acts as a ground cover as well. The fruit trees aren't going to mind, you know, so it's a good use of space because they do take up a lot of space.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. I've had volunteers come, and like, that's another thing. It's like, if I get a volunteer, I don't ever want to rip it out. Like, I have this.
That's a free plant, isn't it?
I'm like, no. So I had volunteer butternut squash and just like completely wrecked my aisles. I had it everywhere, but I'm like, I couldn't pull it. I couldn't do it.
Well, me with those potatoes in the compost. I didn't pull them. I could have just covered that over with a sheet and just let it die down and carried on making my compost. But I thought, well, they've grown. Let's see what happens with them. And I let them grow. I've got a photo in that video. There's a photo of what it was growing like. And then, like I said, I pulled 71 pounds of free potatoes out of the compost bay.
That's amazing.
I wasn't even planning on growing in there, like, you know. You know, it's amazing, you know, what spaces you can do. But one thing it does do is actually show the quality of the compost, you know, because if the compost weren't quality, we'd never have grown that many spuds in it. Like, you know?
Yeah, your compost was perfect because it wasn't too hot. It was perfect.
It was on the cool down. It was when the potato peelings went in. And that was the thing, because I talk in my book, Composting Masterclass, about the thermolytic layers are going up and down like this, but I only turn my compost once, so it has that peak. I turn it as it starts cooling down, so it has another peak, and then on the cool down, then, well, it was just at that time I threw them in, so it was perfect temperature for them to get going. And of course, because I didn't turn it, it didn't have another peak, so it didn't kill them off. They just cooled down, and then I had perfect compost at the end and a load of potatoes.
Nice.
So, Tony, you have classes online besides YouTube?
So no, I've like I said, I've concentrated on the books, but this year I want to actually make some digital courses. The big goal eventually will be to create a load of courses. I've got, what a lot of people don't know is I've also written like 18 or 19 ebooks, but none of them have ever seen the light of day. They're all sat on my computer. I've never released them. Okay, so the idea is eventually is release a load of courses, and then eventually put all the books, the ebooks, the courses, all into like a subscription service where you'll have access to everything for a monthly amount. And if I was to produce a new course or a new book, that would go into that system. So you're constantly getting a new thing just for paying your monthly amount. So that's the goal. And I'll be starting to do that this year, but it'll take time to do, like, you know.
Wow. And how about tomatoes and peppers? Do you like hot peppers?
Yeah, I've got some scorpions and butcherhoker and what have you growing down with there now. They've only just germinated. I don't know if you guys can see it through here. They're all down with there, just germinating in that propagator there. Mm-hmm. So I think I've got about 100 different peppers growing in there at the moment. Various types. So completely from like the golden wonder bell pepper right the way through to scorpions and stuff. So there's a big variety. And this year, a few years ago, I'd done a competition with another creator called Chili Chump. His name's Sean. Now Sean and I are really good friends. That's another channel that you guys, if you like chilies, you need to go and see his channel because it's fantastic. And I tell you something, his filming is incredible. Right, he's really good, and he's a great friend of mine. And we had a competition a few years ago when we first got to know each other, and we done a competition who could grow the largest poblano chili. I used an auto pot system. Do you guys know what auto pots are?
No.
Right. Okay. So they're like, it's like a tray that has a valve in it. So it automatically allows in water and feed. And then the pot sits within the tray. Okay. So it's an automatic watering system, a little bit like a hydroponic system, but it obviously pulls up the nutrients and the water that it requires on its own. Okay. But it's a constant feed. So this year I've bought more of those. So I think I'm going to be running something like 28 of the chilies in those pots, and I'm not going to have to worry about them. And that can just be run straight off an IBC. So I'll just dump in the nutrients into the IBC, and then it can just do its own thing. I'm never going to have to worry about them other than staking and pruning and what have you. So, but anybody who hasn't seen Sean's channel is fantastic. Chili Chump. It is a really great channel.
Yeah, a lot of information. Again, another guy with passion. You know,
yes,
I like following
absolutely.
his channel. So.
Yeah, he's a fantastic guy as well. You know, he's really friendly, but he knows what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm. And now I can see your vision. You would be very scary if you had your vision with those large greenhouses. What you could actually start growing and putting it in it, experimenting.
The problem is I would need a team of people to help me because I just I've already got this massive garden as it is, you know, and I'm there all the time. I also work 48 hours a week, mind. So, you know, so, you know, but if I was to have that, I'd want people there to help me, you know, and because I wouldn't want it to fall behind. I'd want it to look pristine all the time.
So, got about 2 more questions. We're almost 2 hours in this, believe it or not. This is awesome.
This is
crazy.
Yeah.
On another personal note, my last question. You're a firefighter? Or
yes, I'm a firefighter. So I think the equivalent rank in the US would be a chief. So that's someone who's in charge of the whole appliance of firefighters. So that's what I am. So here we call it a watch manager. So I'm the highest ranking officer that would be on a fire engine.
And how often do you go on calls, or how often does that happen?
So I work 2 day shifts, which are 9 till 6. Okay. And then I work 2 night shifts, which are 6 until 9. So it's 2 sort of like 9-hour days and 2 15-hour night shifts. We're out all the time. It's constant, especially at the moment. Our station is a wildfire station as well. So, and around this time of year, the wildfires start kicking in. There is a video actually on my channel from around about May last year. And I think I named it something like 6 Weeks of Hell. And it was just like constant. And I lost control of the garden and everything during that time because it was the hottest weather we'd had. I'd ran out of water. I was doing loads of overtime because we were short with firefighters. And we were just constantly battling all the wildfires and stuff here, you know. So,
wow.
But yeah, it's it frustrates me sometimes when I want to be in the garden. Like if, you know, it's raining a lot here in Wales and then the only dry days I'm in work. And that just frustrates me then because I want to be at the garden filming, you know? So, no, you know, I love the job, but my ideal thing would be to just completely do YouTube and everything else full time. Incidentally, going back to all those people who want to earn all that money when they started their YouTube channel, you know, I've been doing it all of this time and I'm still not full time at it. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah.
I could even imagine a goosebumps when you're each task you have as a firefighter or chief, because everything you say matters. You know, it's life-saving, everything. But
every little decision I make, it, you know, will put someone's life on the line. And so, you know, it's a lot of pressure. It can be a lot of stress, especially if it goes wrong. And you need an outlet for that. And the garden's my outlet.
Wow. Now, do you have them gardening or they just come over and eat all your food?
they would just happily eat all the food. No, like, you know, but no, I wish I could get them over gardening. It's funny, like my brother came and give me a hand a couple of times this year. And he's, you know, he's a big guy and everything else. And all I hear out of him, and he goes to the gym and everything, and all I hear out of him is, you don't know what hard work is. I'm thinking, you cheeky bugger, you know, I'm up the mountain all the time. I said, I tell you what, you come over the garden with me for a day. You'll soon find out what hard work is. And I remember him phoning me after that day. And when I'm at the garden, I'm there all day, right? So, and I'm used to it now, you know. But he got home and he said his wife had to help him up off a sofa. He couldn't move. So he sort of, I think he's had a bit of a new respect for what I do in the garden.
Yeah, I obviously don't garden all year round because I'm in Ohio. But when you have your first couple days, like my backs and my legs hurt, like everything hurts. So
well, the thing is, you're using muscles all the time, aren't you? You're up and down, and even if you're not digging and things like that, you know, you're twisting and you're doing, you know, a real full body workout. It's a great way to stay fit for anybody that, you know, is looking for it. And it's probably why a lot of doctors are saying to older people, you know, they're prescribing gardening as a you know, as a way for them to help with things like arthritis and stuff like that, because they, you know, at least then they're moving their joints and stuff, you know. So that was good.
Thank you, Tony, so much. I mean, I didn't realize it was actually that time coming. I'm like, oh my God.
Flies by, doesn't it? I could talk about gardening all day. So
yeah, I understand. Me and Joe are the same way.
Yeah, Corky and I would be on. It'd be like 11 o'clock, and it'd be like, I got to get to bed.
Yeah.
I'm the same. You know, like I'll speak to Sean or Scott or whatever, you know, or Danny, you know, Mark, whatever, you know, and like before we know, we've been on the phone or whatever for like 4 or 5 hours, you know, and it's like, yeah, time to call it quits, I think.
Well, Tony, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Worries. And I appreciate you having me on, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been really great. And I love learning about your garden. And I'm definitely going to be searching your page for the your potato garden techniques.
Well, Like I said, there's a couple of playlists, but there's, like I said, most of them just go to the videos and then just scroll through them. There is video after video. There's probably 50 videos on potatoes there.
Nice.
But the last one I've done is the one that gives you all of the tips. So, you know, if you're going to watch any of them, watch that one because it shows everything and how it gets to that stage.
Okay.
And go to Amazon. Easiest way, go buy Tony's book, Simplify Vegetable Gardening. There it is.
Definitely go and buy this. You haven't, like I said, you haven't got to buy it on Amazon. I'll give you guys the link, and you can put it in the description for folks, and that way it'll open up like Barnes and Noble and Waterstones and all of those sort of big sort of bookstores that they can get it from if they need to.
Well, what an awesome interview, and thank you for sharing all your information.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, take care,
You're
Tony,
welcome.
and we'll hope to
Bye,
talk
guys.
to you guys soon.
Thanks. Bye, everyone. Bye.